Autodromo José Carlos Paz. Autodromo José Carlos Paz, and I do have it on good authority that
What's up? Welcome back to my stream. Another yours truly stream. Follow my social media down below. And this is we're gonna continue with a brief explanation of every circuit in Formula One history. You feel me? This is part 2 of that same video that we was watching. And without further ado,
Autodromo José Carlos Paz. Autodromo José Carlos Paz, and I do have it on good authority that it is in fact Paz and not Pache, is located 11 miles or 17.7 kilometers south-southwest of central Sao Paulo, in between the artificial lakes Guarapiranga and Billings, hence the name it was christened with when it was built in 1940, Autodromo de Interlagos. In 1985, it was renamed to Autodromo José Carlos Paz to honour the driver who won there in 1975 and was killed in a helicopter crash in 1977, but to most people it's simply known as Interlagos. The original layout was very long, at just under 5 miles or 8 kilometers in length, and was very high speed with a very twisty infield section that gave it the characteristics of an oversized kart track. It was also built on the side of a hill, making it very undulating and bumpy. It began hosting the Brazilian Grand Prix in 1972, which the following year became a World Championship event. It was immediately popular, particularly with the early successes of Emerson Fittipaldi and José Carlos Paz. But after 1980 it was dropped as it needed major renovation and modernisation work done, and FISA did not appreciate the growing favelas encroaching into the area. 10 years later, it was then completely redesigned and shortened dramatically to just 2.7 miles or 4.3 kilometers in length.
I gotta like, look at that shit. Hold on. Boom. Straight. Punch the gas still, turn your wheels a little bit, going that way. And like right here, 20, this is all straight. And you gotta turn your wheels a little bit, go straight. Turn your wheels, decrease speed a little bit, not too much, because like it looks like it's like a wide angle turn right there. And then punch the motherfucking gas. Keep punching the motherfucking gas while turning your wheels. Oh, I feel like here you might have to. It don't look too narrow though. It don't really look too narrow. It don't look too narrow, so I don't think you gotta like brake too much. But you definitely have to reduce speed. This is definitely a fast track. This is a fast fucking track, except for the inside. It's a little bit more technical, but at the same time, I think it's still easy to do. So it is a very fast race right here.
This involved bypassing the back straight and a large part of the infield section, and what was now retained ran in the opposite direction. With this layout, the Brazilian Grand Prix returned, where it has remained ever since, becoming the Sao Paulo Grand Prix in 2021. Since then, it has become one of Formula One's flagship events, with huge crowds turning up to see Ayrton Senna, Rubens Barrichello, and then Felipe Massa. It was moved from the beginning to the end of the season in 2004, and as such was the title-deciding race in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2012. Being in the tropics and in relatively close proximity to the Amazon rainforest means it is also frequently subject to torrential downpours, with the 1974, 1991, 1993, 1996, 2001, 2003, 2004, 2008, 2012, 2016 and 2024 editions all featuring rain.
Oh my
Notable
God.
races
Oh my gosh, that's tough.
Include Ayrton Senna's sensational first home win in 1991, his final tempestuous race there before his untimely death in 1994, wet weather carnage in 2003, Michael Schumacher's first retirement in 2006, that indeed being Glock in 2008, a title-deciding classic in 2012, more rain in 2016, more carnage in 2019, Lewis Hamilton being unstoppable in 2021, and Max Verstappen topping his own 2016 wet weather masterclass in 2024. It is adored by both fans and drivers alike, and will be on the Formula One calendar until at least 2030.
That's a fun track.
And outside of Formula One, also hosts Stock Car Brazil, Superbikes, the 6 Hours of Sao Paulo, Brazilian F4, and Formula Truck. And outside of motorsport entirely, since 2014 it has been the host of the Brazilian version of the Lollapalooza Music Festival. Circuit Zolder. Zolder is located 3 miles or 5 kilometers southwest of Heusden-Zolder in the Flanders region of Belgium. It was built in 1963 and 10 years later was chosen to host the Belgian Grand Prix, alternating with Nivelles-Boulay. From 1975, however, it hosted it on a permanent basis. While an improvement over Nivelles-Boulay, it was still inferior to Spa-Francorchamps. The first race in 1973 was almost cancelled following last-minute resurfacing of the track, and in 1981 a mechanic was killed when he fell from the pit wall in Friday practice, and another was crushed between two cars at the start of the race, but survived. After Gilles Villeneuve was killed in a crash in qualifying in 1982, and Spa had been sufficiently modernised, the Grand Prix moved there for 1983, and was held at Zolder one last time in 1984. Afterwards, a chicane was added at the site of Villeneuve's death, and today it hosts several festivals and heritage events, and also Euro NASCAR, Formula Truck and sports cars, with the main event each year being the Belcar 24 Hours of Zolder. It being the events, a chicane 3, 2, but from the following inferior it on a. It was built 5 kilometers southwest of Heusden Zolder in the Flanders region.
Okay, let's see. In the middle, this is like this is a tricky track, right? Because like for the most part, you're speeding, except for the edges, which you are still speeding. So, but like you gotta remember in the middle, that's where you gotta like slow down significantly, because like them two turns in the middle will fuck you up. If like, because like how many like they do like mad laps, like 70, 80 laps. So like after like a while, you gotta be really like focused. You feel me? Because like after a while, like bro, if you're doing all those like laps, you really gotta focus on the track. Because like after a while, you might forget. You might just keep driving straight and right to the wall. So like the middle of that track will definitely fuck you up.
Of Belgium. Definitely. It was built in 1963. 19 mechanic started 82. Zolder's death. Sports car. Onderstorp Raceway. Onderstorp is located 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers southwest of the village of Onderstorp in Jönköping County in.
Alright, let's look at this one. Let's look at that one. Outside of it, straight punching, speeding. Towards the end, you gotta like lower speed a little bit. You can still go fast. And when you get into that turn on the inside, that's a little tricky. You gotta like significantly like lower your speed. But I feel like that's where most of the passing happens. Right after you punch it on that outside, that turn, that's where the passing happens. Because you might have to like figure out like if you're trying to go fast down that little stretch, or because you definitely have to like lower your speed. You feel me? Because you have like another like turn coming up. So like I feel like right there, that's where like niggas have the opportunity to pass niggas right there. You feel me? And you got a long hair. Well, it's like a wide hair clip. You feel me? A wide fucking turn, and inside punching it straight. Another hair clip. Ooh, this one's like. I feel like this track right here is like niggas is really fighting to pass each other right here.
Sweden. It was built in 1968 and originally called Scandinavian Raceway, and began hosting the Swedish Grand Prix in 1973, becoming the first and so far only Grand Prix in Scandinavia. And at 57 degrees latitude, it is also the northernmost circuit in Formula 1 history. It was a simple design at 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers in length, and the back straight doubled as the runway of the airfield serving the circuit. Another interesting design quirk was that the pit lane was not alongside the start-finish straight. The 1976 race stands out as it was won by Jody Scheckter in the Tyrrell P34, the only Grand Prix won in a 6-wheeled car, and the 1978 race saw the only appearance and victory of the Brabham BT46B fan car. In 1978, however, Gunnar Nilsson died from testicular cancer, and Ronnie Peterson died from a fat embolism after a crash at the Italian Grand Prix, and so domestic interest in the race vanished and it was dropped from the calendar. After this, it became principally a motorcycle venue, but also hosted touring cars and GT cars. In 1994, the circuit went bankrupt and almost closed after hosting a 24-hour motorcycle race that the media falsely reported as cancelled due to the permit being denied because of noise concerns, meaning almost no spectators or journalists showed up. These days, it only hosts domestic series, and every August hosts the Onderstorp Race Festival. Dijon-Prenois. Dijon-Prenois is built 7 miles or 11 kilometers northwest of the city of Dijon and 0.7 miles or 1.1 kilometers south of the village of Prenois in the département of Côte d'Or in Bourgogne-Franche.
Punching on the outside. Wide hair clip. The wide turn. I don't even think that's a hair clip. That hair clip is actually right here. Right there. I feel like this is an easy track, but like the other side of it is a little technical, but overall, I feel like this is an easy track.
Franche-Comté in France. It was designed by rugby player and wrestler François Chambillon, with help from racing drivers Jean-Pierre Beltroise and François Sever, and took 2.5 years to build and opened in 1972. It originally was a sort of deformed oval, with a long straight and then a fast technical section being only 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers in length. In 1974, it became yet another host of the French Grand Prix. However, as the lap times were just over 1 minute, it was considered too short, so a large hairpin was added, lengthening it to 2.4 miles or 3.8 kilometers, and it returned in 1977, alternating with Paul Ricard. It only hosted the race 4 more times, but at the 1979 race, Jean-Pierre Jabouille made history by being the first French winner of the French Grand Prix in 40 years, and was also the first Grand Prix winner in a turbocharged car. Behind him, however, teammate René Arnoux and Gilles Villeneuve had an iconic battle for second, bumping wheels and pushing each other wide, in a way that today would probably result in multiple penalties and both drivers losing their super licenses. Dijon-Prenois hosted the Swiss Grand Prix in 1982, as motorsport was still banned in Switzerland at the time, but after hosting the French Grand Prix one last time in 1984, it disappeared from Formula One for good. Today, Dijon-Prenois is an active venue mostly hosting domestic events, including the FFSA GT Championship, Porsche Carrera Cup France, and French F4. Long Beach Street Circuit.
Long Beach Street Circuit.
Long Beach is a street circuit on the waterfront in Long Beach, California, 20 miles or 32 kilometers south of downtown.
Alright, let's look at it. This track is a little... This track is a little technical, especially at the ends. You got a little hairpin right there, and then you punching it, and still punching it, and you gotta like really get technical right there in that little corner right here, and then straight punching it. But that's a fast track right here. Niggas is punching it.
Los Angeles. It was built in 1975 by Christopher Pook to host a Formula 5000 race, and the following year was chosen to be the host of the new United States Grand Prix West, as FISA were looking to have a second race in the United States.
Oh my god, look at that elevation.
It was a big hit, as it offered a grueling challenge to the drivers in the race in the United States.
So there's like a tight turn.
United States Grand Prix.
There's a tight turn, and I ain't gonna lie, bro, niggas could really fly off this hill right here. Like if you time that shit like correctly, you catching air for sure, bro.
West, as FISA were looking to have a second race in the United States. It was a big hit, as it offered a grueling challenge to the drivers and the cars, and a pleasant Southern California setting, being America's answer to the Monaco Grand Prix. It was very narrow, which meant there were frequent accidents, and in 1980, Clay Regazzoni had a 180-mile-per-hour crash into a stationary car, which left him paralysed from the waist down, ending his Formula One career. Over the next few years, the circuit was modified, and in the 1982 race, Ferrari ran a car with 2 rear wings, rather facetiously exploiting a loophole in the regulations that prescribed a maximum width for rear wings, but not a maximum number of rear wings. And then, in 1983, John Watson won from a record high of 22nd on the grid. Due to rising costs, the 1983 race was the final one held there, and the following year it became an IndyCar race, which it remains to this day. The Grand Prix of Long Beach is one of the flagship events of the IndyCar calendar and brings huge amounts of business and tourism to the area. The circuit was modified again in 1999 to make way for an expansion to the Long Beach Convention and Entertainment Center in the infield, so most of the original layout has gone, but Shoreline Drive, which has always been the spine of the circuit, remains. Fuji Speedway. Fuji Speedway is located 4 miles or 6.5 kilometers north of the city of Gotemba in Shizuoka Prefecture in Japan, and 11 miles or 17 kilometers east of the summit of Mount...
Let's look at this one. Outside, punching it. Feel me? the end, like the this end right here, technical, bro. Technical as fuck, bro. So you gotta really like decrease the speed heavily. Oh, that's tough because like that hairpin kind of like goes like that. Feel me? So yeah, at that end right there, you really gotta like really like know what you're doing. Niggas are definitely gonna pass you. That's the passing opportunity right there. And that little punch, not really. A little punch, niggas might think you could punch it, but not really, because it's going back in. Feel me? Back into another hairpin, then a wide hairpin, wide turn, and punching it. Ooh, that's it's a little technical track right
Fuji.
there.
The genesis of the circuit was for
Oh, that's
Japan to have its
technical.
own super speedway to host NASCAR-style races. However, due to lack of funds, only the first section of banking was built, and the project was then taken over by Mitsubishi Estate, and the circuit was completed in 1965 and began hosting the non-championship Japanese Grand Prix. The banking that was built resembled something of a proboscis and was followed by two very long, very fast right-handers, and then a 1.1 mile or 1.8 kilometre long straight, making it one of the fastest circuits in the world at 3.7 miles or 5.9 kilometres in length. The banking, named Daiichi, was especially dangerous, as it was banked at 30 degrees and the drivers went downhill into it instead of uphill, which resulted in several fatal accidents in the early years. After drivers Hiroshi Kazato and Seiichi Suzuki were killed in a crash there in a Fuji Grand Champion Series race in 1974 that also injured 6 spectators, the banking was cut off and a sharp hairpin was built at turn 1, which reduced the length of the main straight down to just under 1 mile or 1.6 kilometres, and the entire circuit down to 2.7 miles or 4.4 kilometres. This banking still exists but is somewhat overgrown. With this new, much safer layout, 2 years later the Japanese Grand Prix was added to the Formula 1 calendar, becoming the first Grand Prix held in Asia. The first race was a classic held in torrential rain, in which Niki Lauda voluntarily withdrew due to the dangerous conditions, which allowed James Hunt to take the title. In the 1977 race, however, Gilles Villeneuve and Ronnie Peterson were involved in a collision that killed 2 spectators, and so the Grand Prix was dropped as the circuit was considered to still be too dangerous, and just getting to Japan was difficult, as at the time China and the Soviet Union banned Western aircraft from flying in their airspace. The circuit was used prominently for domestic racing, and the World Sports Car Championship also visited there, but in 1987 2 chicanes were added, in 2000 the circuit was bought by Toyota, and then in 2004 Hermann Tilke was summoned, another chicane was installed, and the final corner, 300R, was replaced with a series of switchbacks, slowing the circuit down a lot and making it more technical. Because of this, the Japanese Grand Prix moved back to Fuji in 2007, having been held at Honda's home ground of Suzuka for the preceding 20 years. The race, however, was held in torrential rain that included a 40-minute safety car period, and the event in general was very badly organised. The 2008 race was better organised, but the credit crunch forced Toyota to hand the reins back to Suzuka and Honda from 2009. Today, Fuji Speedway is used actively for all domestic series in Japan, and also hosts the 6 Hours of Fuji as part of the World Endurance Championship. In the 2020 Summer Olympics, it was also used as a venue for cycling events. Autodromo Internacional Nelson Piquet. Nelson Piquet International Circuit was located in the Jacarepaguá district of southwestern Rio de Janeiro.
Holy shit, my nigga. Wait, hold on. Is it still? Oh no, it's been heavily. Wait, is it still open? It looks like it's closed, or like it's been like redone. Because what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing is 2 completely different things. Like remnants of what once was there. But looking at this track, bro, this track looks like a fast technical circuit, bro.
Originally, the site was the location of the Autodromo Nova Caledonia, built on reclaimed marshland in 1966, but this was demolished in 1970 to make way for a brand new circuit. It took 7 years to build and opened in January 1978, just in time to host the Brazilian Grand Prix. It was originally christened as Autodromo Rio Centro, and in 1987 was named after Nelson Piquet after he won his 3rd title, but to most people was known as Jacarepaguá. It became the permanent host of the Brazilian Grand Prix in 1981 while Interlagos was undergoing renovation. It was the season opener for the rest of the decade and became a suitable winter testing venue due to its tropical climate. It was a popular circuit as it was open and expansive with plenty of overtaking spots, making it very well suited to turbocharged cars. Nelson Piquet was disqualified from the win in 1982 and collapsed on the podium, but won it 2 other times, while Alain Prost won at the circuit 5 times. In 1989, Nigel Mansell took the first win with a semi-automatic gearbox, but after this, Formula One was tempted back over to a refurbished Interlagos. In 1996, the circuit was slightly modified and a trapezoid-shaped speedway was built into it called the Emerson Fittipaldi Speedway, which began being used for IndyCar. In the 2000s, the circuit gradually went into decline. From 2005, a shortened configuration started being used, and then, in 2012, the entire circuit was demolished to make way for the Barra Olympic Park, which would host the Summer Olympics in 2016. This means that amongst abandoned Formula One circuits, Jacarepagua compares only with Riverside and Caesars Palace in there being absolutely no trace of it still left. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
Oh, it looks like a nice circuit.
Circuit Gilles Villeneuve is a road circuit built on Île Notre-Dame, an artificial island on the St. Lawrence River in Montreal in Canada. Île Notre-Dame, an artificial island on the St. Lawrence River in Montreal in Canada.
It's technical as fuck. It's fast and technical, especially at the end on the north side, bro. That hairpin is tight. Tight hairpins on both ends. But overall, the track looks like it's a fast track, and like that little corner right there, a little technical.
Canada. Île Notre-Dame was built in 1963 in order to host Expo 67 4 years later. After this, the island gradually fell into disrepair, but was revitalised with the construction of the Circuit Île Notre-Dame, designed by Roger Pert in 1978. It began hosting the Canadian Grand Prix that year, and has done so ever since, save for 1987, 2009, 2020 and 2021. The circuit makes partial use of the original roads on the island, and is characterised by being very narrow and having no high-speed corners. The paddock and the Casino Straight run parallel to the Olympic Basin, which hosted the rowing and canoeing events in the 1976 Summer Olympics. Joining them is a chicane with a concrete wall on its exit, which has become known as the Wall of Champions, as Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, Jenson Button and Sebastian Vettel have all crashed there. Gilles Villeneuve won the first race there, and after his death in 1982 the circuit was named after him. The original circuit was very technical but gradually evolved over the years into a power track. It has become a mainstay of the calendar and produced several classic races. Jean Alesi took his sole win there in 1995. Lewis Hamilton took his first win in 2007, but in 2008 he crashed into Kimi Raikkonen in the pit lane, which allowed Robert Kubica to bounce back from his horror crash the previous year to take his sole win. The 2010 race indirectly triggered the development of the pathetically weak Pirelli tyres we've had to endure since 2011, as the circuit being resurfaced created unprecedented tyre degradation for the super durable Bridgestone tyres, which led to unpredictable tyre strategies. And the 2011 race was held in torrential rain and saw 6 safety cars and a 2-hour red flag period, being the longest race in Formula One history. Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton have 7 wins apiece here, and it will remain on the calendar until at least 2031. Autodromo Internazionale Enzo e Dino Ferrari. Enzo and Dino Ferrari International Circuit is located on the opposite banks of the Santerno River from the town of Imola in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy.
Oh, we seen this one. The shriveled up banana. Hold on. That's, if I remember correctly, that was high up there as being one of the difficult ones, bro. That looks difficult. That's a technical as fuck track if I ever seen it, bro. There's no opportunities to punch it, bro. All the roads seems like they turn and curve a little bit. Yeah, no, that's a very technical track right there.
20 miles, or 32 kilometers southeast of Bologna. It was built from 1950 to 1953 and christened as the Autodromo di Imola, and was originally only intended for motorcycle racing. In 1957 it was renamed to Autodromo Dino Ferrari, following his untimely death, and then in 1988 was renamed again to Autodromo Internazionale Enzo e Dino Ferrari, following his father's death, though it is usually just referred to as Imola. It hosted the non-championship Imola Grand Prix and Dino Ferrari Grand Prix in 1963 and 1979 respectively, and in 1980 was chosen to host the Italian Grand Prix in place of Monza, which was undergoing refurbishment. The race was so popular and such a success that from 1981 it became the host of the San Marino Grand Prix, despite being 43 miles or 70 kilometres away from San Marino. By this point, chicanes had been added at Acque Minerali, Variante Alta and Variante Bassa, as the circuit was extremely high speed, augmented by being built on the side of a hill. Of particular concern was the first two corners, Tamburello and Villeneuve, which were a flat-out left-hander and then a flat-out right-hander with nothing but concrete walls on the outside. In 1980, Ferrari teammates Jody Scheckter and Gilles Villeneuve both crashed at Villeneuve in practice and the race respectively, following which the corner was named after the latter. In practice for the 1987 race, Nelson Piquet crashed at Tamburello after a tyre failure which resulted in the loss of most of his depth perception. Then, in the 1989 race, Gerhard Berger hit the concrete wall at Tamburello at full speed and the car burst into flames, giving him broken ribs and second-degree burns. Things came to a head in 1994, however. During practice, Rubens Barrichello went airborne into the tyre barriers at Variante Bassa and broke his nose and missed the race. The following day, during qualifying, Roland Ratzenberger hit the concrete wall at Villeneuve at full speed and was killed on impact, becoming the first death behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car in 8 years and the first death at a Grand Prix weekend in 12 years. Then, at the start of the race, Pedro Lamy rear-ended a stalled JJ Leto, sending debris flying into the grandstands, injuring a police officer and 8 spectators. A few laps later, Ayrton Senna hit the concrete wall at Tamburello at full speed and received fatal head injuries, which made this the first Grand Prix with 2 driver fatalities in 34 years. As a result of this, in 1995, chicanes were added at Tamburello and Villeneuve with complementary gravel traps, while as a trade-off, the chicane at Acque Minerali was removed and Variante Bassa was made faster. Even though it was safer, these modifications took away a lot of the spirit and challenge of the original layout. It continued hosting races, but had an endless problem with a lack of overtaking, though this worked to its benefits with titanic duels between Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher in both 2005 and 2006. After 2006, however, it was dropped from the calendar. 14 years later in 2020, however, it returned to host the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, and has done so ever since, save for in 2023 when the race was cancelled due to severe flooding in the area. By now, a bypass had been added at Variante Bassa, though the chicane is still used for motorcycles. As Lando Norris proved in 2024, even with DRS, overtaking is still not easy, although maybe that was just him. The circuit will be on the calendar until at least 2025 and is one of the most visually stunning tracks, being next to a medieval town at the base of the Apennine Mountains, and rain makes regular appearances. It also hosts Formula 2, Formula 3, FRECA, Italian F4, touring cars, GT cars, the 4 Hours of Imola for the European Le Mans Series, and the 6 Hours of Imola for the World Endurance Championship. The circuit has a long-standing relationship with Minardi, as their factory, now used by RB, is only 8 miles or 12 kilometres away in Faenza, and the founder of Minardi, Giancarlo Minardi, is president of the circuit. As such, each year it hosts the historic Minardi Day, a festival where classic Minardi Formula 1 cars feature, as well as former Minardi drivers such as Pierluigi Martini and Luca Badoer. It's also frequently used for what little testing mileage teams are permitted, particularly by Ferrari and RB. Caesars Palace Grand Prix Circuit.
What is
Caesars
that?
Palace was a hastily built temporary circuit built in the parking lot of the iconic Caesars Palace Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1981. Caesars Palace Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1981.
What the fuck is that? Yo. Nah, bro. That circuit is ridiculous. Nah, bro. What the fuck? Very technical. I feel like it's very technical, slow. I think there's a lot of opportunities for overtaking. I feel like, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to overtake. But other than that, bro, it's a very technical fucking track right here.
It was flat, largely featureless, surrounded by sand, and had a repetitive layout that resembled a trident. It was the season finale in 1981, and as such saw Nelson Piquet crowned champion, but was panned by drivers and spectators as it was far less popular than the United States Grand Prix West in Long Beach, and a very uninspired track that happened to be extremely physically demanding due to the sustained corners running counterclockwise and intense daytime heat. The 1982 race saw Keke Rosberg crowned champion, but after this it was dropped as attendance was poor and it caused a huge financial loss for the hotel. Both years it also appeared on the Can-Am calendar, and in 1983 and 1984 it was used for IndyCar, now being turned into a distorted oval. These, however, were not popular either, and it was never used again and has since been completely built over with the Forum shops at Caesars Shopping Mall and the Mirage Casino. Detroit Street Circuit. Detroit is a street circuit on the waterfront of the Detroit River, facing Windsor, Canada, on the opposite banks.
What the? Hold on, back up. What the fuck?
Street circuit on the waterfront of the Detroit River, facing Windsor, Canada, on the opposite bank.
What kind of circuit is that? What kind of circuit is that, bruh? That shit looks annoying as hell. That shit don't look fun, bro. That shit does not look fun. That shit looks annoying. I feel like I'd be mad if I was driving that circuit, so I ain't gonna lie, bro.
It was built in 1982 in an attempt to improve Detroit's image, as the formerly mighty automotive capital of America had been in a rapid decline since the 1950s, as many of the factories and businesses closed down and the workforce moved out into the suburbs, and so the city fell into ruin and became a crime and unemployment hotspot. It began hosting the Detroit Grand Prix in 1982, being the third race in America on that year's calendar. The first race there would see John Watson win from 17th, and in 1983, Michele Alboreto took the last ever victory for Tyrrell, and the last ever for the Ford Cosworth DFV V8 engine. As is typical of many street circuits, it was very narrow and surrounded by concrete walls, and was especially grueling as it was very bumpy and full of 90-degree turns, which meant mechanical failures were rampant. The 1984 race saw 20 retirements from 26 starters, and by 1985 it was the only American race on the calendar. The physical demands of the track on both man and machine meant a lot of drivers did not like it, and after the 1988 race, where the track surface was cracking and breaking up, they had had enough and it was dropped from the calendar. Thereafter, it was used by IndyCar, but they then stopped in 1991, and the circuit was closed. 22 years later, in 2023, however, it reopened, as in recent years Detroit has been undergoing something of a renaissance. It is now used by IndyCar, but on a much simplified and much shortened layout that bears little resemblance to the original Grand Prix circuit. Dallas Grand Prix Circuit. Dallas Grand Prix Circuit was a street circuit built in the historic Fair Park in the eastern part of Dallas, Texas.
That shit looks annoying as fuck, too. That looks like a fucking annoying ass circuit. Yeah, bro, that's technical as fuck. And look at this. What is this little, what is that? Yo, nah, bro, nah. The circuit looks like, I'd be mad if I'm driving the circuits too.
Texas. Fair Park began hosting the Dallas State Fair in 1886 and hosted the Texas Centennial Exposition in 1936, and so the circuit was built in 1984 to host the Dallas Grand Prix to try and regain some of that former glory and show Dallas off as a world-class city. Unfortunately, however, the circuit was a fairly uninventive design, and the Fair Park Coliseum was utilised as the paddock, which was normally used for rodeos and other livestock events, which led to Bernie Ecclestone saying, "We don't normally work in cow shit." Another issue was that the race was scheduled for July, and so throughout the weekend, daytime air temperatures reached 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and the track temperature reached 66 degrees Celsius or 150 degrees Fahrenheit.
God
the
damn.
race, which started 3 hours earlier than normal, was almost cancelled at the last minute as the morning warm-up was cancelled due to emergency repairs from a Can-Am crash that was still being done 30 minutes before the race start.
Damn.
The tarmac was literally bubbling and gradually disintegrating as the race went on, which was won by Keke Rosberg as 11 other drivers spun off. The intense heat and general disorganisation meant it was not used again, aside from a Can-Am race in 1988. These days, a lot of the original layout still exists, though it's hardly recognisable as such, as it mostly goes through car parks. Autodromo Fernando.
That looks like a fun track. Fun but technical. Punch it in the right here. Punch that shit. The hairpin is a little wide. Looks like after that big large ass hairpin at the end right there. Opportunities to overtake for real. And the interior of it, a little punch. You can still overtake. The inside of it, mad technical. Outside, good opportunities to punch. But the inside, overtaking the technical skills required.
Fernando Pires da Silva. The Fernando Pires da Silva circuit is located 3 miles or 4.5 kilometers north of the coastal Portuguese town of Estoril, and 14 miles or 23 kilometers west-northwest of the nation's capital of Lisbon. It was originally built in 1972 by businesswoman Fernanda Pires da Silva and christened as Autódromo do Estoril, but was eventually renamed after its builder. In 1975, the circuit was taken over by the state, who ran it into the ground for 3 years, and afterwards it was heavily refurbished and began hosting the Portuguese Grand Prix in 1984, bringing it back to Formula 1 after a 24-year absence, and being only 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the former host circuit of Boa Vista. It was an immediate hit as the circuit was very technical and undulating with a very long main straight. Almost every race held there was a classic, and the 1984 and 1993 races were title deciders. A chicane was added in 1994 as a response to the deaths of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger, but it now began to run into problems as the Portuguese government were unwilling to modernise and renovate the circuit, and the race was dropped after 1996. After this, Estoril became a premium venue for motorcycles and also hosts sports and GT cars. Adelaide Street Circuit. Adelaide Street Circuit is built in the Adelaide Parklands encircling Adelaide city centre in the Australian state of South Australia.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. That's a fun circus. And it looks like whatever you buy is $19.99. Dead ass. That's a fast track. Fast, a little technical, but that looks like a fun circuit, bro. That's a fun circuit.
It's a semi-permanent street circuit, which aside from the pit straight, Senna chicane, turns 12 to 15 and the Mistral hairpin, is made up entirely of public roads. It was built in 1985 by businessman Bill O'Gorman to serve as the venue for the Australian Grand Prix upon its promotion to Formula 1 level, and acted as the season finale for the next 10 years. It proved very popular with both drivers and fans due to the party atmosphere and mixture of 90-degree turns and the long Brabham straight. It was also subject to extreme heat, and in the case of the 1989 and 1991 races, extreme rain. It provided 2 very dramatic title deciders, first in 1986, where Alain Prost came from behind to take his second driver's title after a tyre blowout for Nigel Mansell, and then in 1994, where Michael Schumacher took his first driver's title after a controversial collision with Damon Hill at Turn 6. Adelaide Street Circuit lost the rights to host the Australian Grand Prix in 1995, and was closed before reopening in 1999 with a shortened layout that bypasses the original Turn 7 to 10 and goes across Bartels Road. These days, it is an active venue that hosts V8 Supercars, GT World Challenge Australia and S5000, as well as the Adelaide Motorsport Festival. Circuito de Jerez, Ángel Nieto. Jerez Circuit is located 4 miles or 6.3 kilometers northeast of the city of Jerez de la Frontera in Andalusia in Spain. 3 kilometers northeast of the city of Jerez de la Frontera in Andalusia in Spain.
Oh, technical. Feel like there's a lot of opportunities to overtake here. I feel like this track is almost annoying, but pretty cool.
Spain. It was built by engineer Manuel Medina Lara in 1985 to 2.6 miles or 4.2 kilometers in length, and the following year began hosting the Spanish Grand Prix. During its tenure, it struggled with poor attendance figures as it was in a relatively remote location in southern Spain, and so it was dropped from the calendar after 1990. 4 years later, however, it returned to host the European Grand Prix, by which point a long right-hander called Curvacito Ponce had been added, as well as the chicane at Curva Alex Crivelle, where Martin Donnelly had suffered career-ending injuries in a crash in 1990, and it was named after Ayrton Senna. This was a one-off, but it then hosted the European Grand Prix again in 1997 after Estoril was unable to do so, and was now the season finale. This race, of course, is remembered for Michael Schumacher, Jacques Villeneuve and Heinz-Harald Frentzen all setting an identical pole time in qualifying, and then Schumacher deliberately turning in on Villeneuve during the race and getting himself excluded from the championship. Then, during the podium ceremony, the mayor of Jerez, Pedro Pacheco, disrupted proceedings by handing out a trophy that was supposed to be handed out by the chairman of Daimler-Benz, Jürgen Schrempp. This resulted in the circuit being permanently banned from hosting a Grand Prix, though 2 months later this ban was rescinded by the World Motorsport Council. It has not hosted a race since, but was used regularly for pre-season testing until 2015, and is now used principally for motorcycle racing. Because of this, in 2018 it was renamed after the recently deceased motorcycle legend Angel Nieto. The Hungaroring. The Hungaroring is located just south of the town of Mogorod and 10 miles or 16 kilometers northeast of the Hungarian capital of Budapest.
This one, Hungara. It don't look like it's like complicated. It don't look like it's very hard, bro. It doesn't look like that, bro, at all. The bottom half looks punchy. You got the 2 hairpins on the inside after the punch. I feel like it could overtake there. It looks pretty straightforward, and the top end looks a little annoying. But overall, it don't look that hard or like complicated, bro.
Budapest. In the 1980s, Bernie Ecclestone was looking to get a Grand Prix in the Soviet Union, but it was suggested to him that what at the time was called the Hungarian People's Republic might be a more realistic option. The Hungaroring was therefore built in 1986 by István Papp and Ferenc Gulacsi and began hosting the Hungarian Grand Prix, therefore becoming the first Grand Prix held behind the Iron Curtain, and was the first Hungarian Grand Prix in 50 years. It has hosted the race ever since and is one of the more popular events as it is on the cheaper side and in a very accessible, centralised location. As such, the Hungaroring is the 3rd most popular tourist attraction in Hungary, behind the Danube Bend and Lake Balaton. In 1989, the chicane just after Turn 3 was removed, as it was only a temporary addition following the discovery of a spring blocking the track's path. And then, in 2002, the main straight was lengthened by 200 metres and the Turn 1 hairpin was tightened, and Turns 11 and 12 were turned into a 90-degree right-hander, forming the circuit's present layout at 2.7 miles or 4.4 kilometres in length. It's described as Monaco without barriers, as it's a high downforce technical circuit with short straights, which therefore makes overtaking almost impossible, even with DRS. As it's held in July, the only wet races on record so far are 2006, 2014, 2020 and 2021. Damon Hill, Fernando Alonso, Jenson Button, Heikki Kovalainen, Esteban Ocon and Oscar Piastri all got their first wins there, and Nigel Mansell clinched the title there in 1992 and Michael Schumacher in 2001. It also has rather unique winners' trophies, which are handcrafted porcelain urns worth €40,000 that take 6 months to make, and about 2 seconds to destroy. It will be on the calendar until at least 2032, and other than Sochi has been Formula One's sole representative in Eastern Europe. Suzuka International Racing Course. Suzuka is 3.5 miles or 5.8 kilometers southwest of the city of Suzuka in Mie Prefecture.
It's very complicated. A little annoying, mad technical, bro. Yeah, this track is annoying as hell.
In Japan. It was built by John Hugenholtz in 1962 and commissioned by Honda, who used it as their new testing track, and features a unique figure-of-8 layout. The original circuit was extremely fast, with little to no braking, but in 1982 a chicane was added at the final corner, now known as the Casio Triangle, and since then several other corners have undergone minor reprofiling to make it safer. Even so, there have been 19 fatalities at the circuit, with notable examples including Hitoshi Ogawa in 1992, Elmo Langley in 1996, Daijiro Kato in 2003, and of course, Jules Bianchi in 2014. In 1987, it was chosen to host the resurrected Japanese Grand Prix and was an immediate hit, and has hosted it every year since except 2007, 2008, 2020 and 2021. Early on, it became immortalised by the 2 title-deciding collisions between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna in 1989 and 1990, and as it until recently was held in the latter half of the season, and had often been the season finale, it was the title-deciding race in 1987 to 1991, 1996, 1998 to 2000, 2003, 2011 and 2022. It's also frequently hit by typhoons, with the 1988, 1993, 1994, 1995, 2000, 2014 and 2022 races all featuring rain, and rain on Saturday in 2010 and 2019 forced qualifying to be held on Sunday morning both years. Sebastian Vettel and many other drivers have declared it their favourite circuit, and it will be on the calendar until at least 2029, and probably further, unless Honda's rivals Toyota can tempt Formula One back to Fuji. It also hosts Super GT, Super Formula, and its two crowning events, the 8 Hours of Suzuka and the Suzuka 1000 km. Phoenix Street Circuit. Phoenix was a street circuit located right in the center of downtown Phoenix, Arizona.
At that end of that shit, like down there, it's annoying as fuck. But like after that, just punching it. And this section right here looks annoying as fuck. I feel like it's a very, very fast and slightly technical circuit right here.
It was built in 1989 as the brainchild of retired racing driver and businessman Guy Gagnon, with the full approval of the city council as an alternative to the dwindling Grand Prix in Detroit. They signed a 5-year contract to bring back the United States Grand Prix after a 9-year absence. Construction was difficult as it was in such a busy part of the city, and its rather basic design was 2.4 miles or 3.8 kilometers in length. The first race was held in July, and therefore, like with Caesars Palace, Detroit, and Dallas before it, was run in oppressive heat. So, to combat this, in 1990 it became the season opener in March. In 1991, the circuit was changed, and at the Turn 1 hairpin it now extended south to East Jackson Street, and then went into a hairpin and cut off the section on 5th Street, East Monroe Street and 3rd Street, and replaced it with a fast right-left. After this race, however, it was abruptly dropped from the calendar, with Bernie Ecclestone citing poor accessibility and visibility for spectators. The only other series to use it were Mexican Formula 3 and Trans Am, but they also stopped, and so the circuit was closed. The original layout still exists in its entirety aside from the chicane and the final hairpin, but most of what was added in 1991 has now been built over. Circuit de Nevers-Manicourt. Manicourt is located 8 miles or 13 kilometers south of the city of Nevers and 1.2 miles or 1.9 kilometers southeast of the village of Manicourt in the département of Nièvre in Bourgogne-Franche-Comté in France.
That looks like a fun circuit. Looks like a fun, chill, little technical, little opportunities to overtake. But overall, I like this circuit. The circuit looks lit.
It was built in 1960 by Jean Bernagot and originally called Circuit Jean Beyrat, named after the driver who had died 2 years earlier. At first, it had an extremely basic triangle-shaped layout only 1.2 miles or 2 kilometers in length, and became the home of the École de Pilotage Winfield, or Winfield Racing School, which trained future Formula One drivers François Sevère, Patrick Depailler, Jacques Lafitte, Jean-Pierre Jarier, and Didier Pironi. In 1971, Jean Bernagot died, and the circuit was taken over by the local Automobile Association, who added a large hook-like extension that lengthened the circuit to 2.4 miles or 3.9 kilometers. In the 1980s, the circuit went into decline and was largely abandoned until being purchased by the Conseil départemental de la Nièvre in 1986, under the command of then-President of France François Mitterrand, who was a close friend of Guy Ligier and had once been on the National Assembly for Nièvre. Under them, the circuit was thoroughly renovated, and a new layout was built in 1989 that moved the paddock to after the former Turn 1 and made the circuit faster and more technical. It was with this layout that it was chosen to replace Paul Ricard as host of the French Grand Prix in 1991, becoming France's premium motorsport venue, and a popular testing track for Renault, Ligier and Prost. As the races were by and large uneventful, in 2003 the final corner was modified to improve overtaking opportunities and added a new chicane, but made little difference. A lot of the corners are modelled on and named after corners from other circuits.
That's a fun
Turn
circuit.
3, Estoril, being Parabolica Ayrton Senna, the Turn 5 hairpin, Adelaide, being the Mistral hairpin, Turn 7, Nürburgring, being Pflanzgarten 1, and Turn 12, Imola, being Variante Alta. In 2002, Michael Schumacher secured the title here with a record 6 races remaining, and then in 2004 won the race on a 4-stop strategy, becoming a winner at the circuit on 8 separate occasions. After 2008, the circuit was dropped from the calendar as attendance and accessibility was poor as it was in a remote rural location far from any major cities. The Bol d'Or had also been hosted there, but was dropped in 2015, and today Manicourt hosts French Formula 4, superbikes, GT cars and various small-scale domestic events. Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya is located half a mile or 0.8 of a kilometre north of Montmeló in Catalonia in Spain, and 12 miles or 19 kilometres north-northeast of central Barcelona.
Are we seeing this one? Bottom half, punching it. But the rest of it, the interior, it looks like it's a little technical. A lot of opportunities to overtake at the end of it, but the interior gives you like an opportunity to get like yourself like back and like focus up before all the other turns like come up. So if you like, I feel like if you're able to like get yourself like in like the right like state of mind, like in the middle, like I think you're good. You might have an opportunity to leave like them niggas in the dust, because when that like straight comes again, niggas is punching it, bro.
Barcelona.
Niggas is punching it.
It was built from 1989 to 1991 and was originally christened Circuit de Barcelona, and then became Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in 2013 following a sponsorship deal with the Barcelona City Council. It began hosting the Spanish Grand Prix in 1991, but was also built with the upcoming Summer Olympics in mind, and acted as the start and finish line for the road team time trial cycling event the following year in 1992. The circuit's design was heavily inspired by Estoril and is only 14 miles or 22 kilometres north-northeast of the sites of its Spanish Grand Prix ancestors, Pedralbes and Montjuic. It has hosted the Spanish Grand Prix every year since 1991, and due to its accessible location and variety of corner types, it is an extremely popular testing venue. This, however, has had the knock-on effect that many of the races have been substandard, as even though the circuit is very aerodynamically demanding and very windy, the drivers and teams are so familiar with it. Despite that, the first race in 1991 saw an iconic side-by-side battle with Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna. In 1996, Michael Schumacher dominated in the rain to take his first win for Ferrari. In 2012, Pastor Maldonado took a shock win for Williams, and in 2016, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg came together and gave Max Verstappen the win on his debut with Red Bull. The circuit has also been very dangerous, and in 2007 a chicane was added at the final very fast corner, and was then adopted by motorcycles in 2016 after the fatal accident of Louis Salom. But Formula 1 has since removed it again as it killed the track's rhythm and created a lot of congestion. As well as motorcycles, it also hosts Formula 2, Formula 3, Spanish Formula 4, Elms, GT cars and touring cars. Even though the races are often dull, attendance is very good, helped in no part by the presence of Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz. But despite that, in 2026 it's being replaced by a street circuit in Madrid that no one asked for. Donington Park. Donington Park is located 1 mile or 1.6 kilometres southwest of Castle Donington and just to the west of East Midlands Airport in the English county of Leicestershire.
It's a fun track. That's a fun track. It's a fun track. The bottom of it's a little annoying, but a little technical. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to overtake there, like at the that little thing sticking out right there. And then I like the rest of the track. It's fun. Niggas just punching it. It looks like it's a fast track. I feel like the technical skills come into play at that little turn right here, and the opportunities for overtake also. But the rest of it looks like it's a smooth track.
And adjacent to the border with Derbyshire. The land it's on is part of the Donington Hall estate, and in 1931, retired motorcycle rider and secretary of the Derby and District Motor Club, Fred Craner, was given permission by the estate's owner, John Gillies Shields, to use some of the park roads on the estate for racing. 2 years later, the roads were widened and it was turned into an official permanent circuit for the sum of £12,000, just over £700,000 in 2025 money, only the second one in the United Kingdom after Brooklands, and it began hosting the Donington Grand Prix. As it was built in a valley, it was bumpy and heavily undulating. When war broke out in 1939, however, it was closed and requisitioned by the Ministry of Defence and turned into a storage depot for military vehicles. It was given back to the Gillies Shields family by the MOD in 1956, 11 years after the war had ended, but by now had fallen into ruin. In 1971, businessman Tom Wheatcroft bought the grounds of the estate, including the derelict circuit, for £100,000, £1.25 million in 2025 money. As an avid motorsport enthusiast, and founder of Wheatcroft Racing, with which he entered a customer Brabham BT26A driven by Derek Bell for the 1970 Belgian Grand Prix, he opened the Donington Grand Prix exhibition in 1973, which, until its closure in 2018, was the largest collection of Formula 1 cars in the world. The circuit reopened against resistance from Leicestershire County Council in 1977. Wheatcroft was determined for it to host a Grand Prix, and 16 years later it was chosen as the new host of the European Grand Prix. This race was wet and is famous for Ayrton Senna's supreme drive, outmanoeuvring Alain Prost in his vastly superior Williams. Despite the event being a massive hit, Wheatcroft had taken a huge financial loss in hosting it, and so did not pursue any further Grand Prix. It thereafter became a premium venue for touring cars, and in 1985 the Melbourne Loop had been added to make it suitable for motorcycles, which increased its original length from 2 miles or 3.2 kilometres to 2.5 miles or 4 kilometres. In 2007, Wheatcroft sold the circuit on a 150-year lease to Donington Ventures Leisure Limited, who immediately set out to try and bring Formula One back. They soon after secured the rights to hold the British Grand Prix from 2010 and brought in Hermann Tilke to redesign the circuit with an extended infield section and moving the paddock onto the Melbourne Loop. It turned out, however, that Simon Gillett, head of DVLL, was literally writing cheques he couldn't cash. Wheatcroft took them to court to try and forfeit the lease, DVLL went into administration, and the British Grand Prix was handed back to Silverstone on a 17-year deal. Tom Wheatcroft died in October 2009, and 2 months later his son Kevin acquired ownership of the circuit. The circuit had been turned into a building site, and in 2010 the lease was sold to the Adroit Group, who rebuilt the dismantled sections, but were unable to save the iconic Dunlop Bridge spanning Starkey Strait. This lease, however, lasted less than a year, and in 2017 Motorsport Vision, fronted by former Formula One driver Jonathan Palmer, took over the circuit on a 21-year lease, expiring in 2038. In 2021, they acquired the entire estate, including Donington Hall, which is currently being converted into a hotel. The circuit is now a very active venue, hosting British touring cars, British Formula 4, GB3, GB4, Superbikes and GT cars, amongst others. It's also been the home of the Download Music Festival since 2003, and in 1992 hosted Britain's biggest ever rave, with almost 30,000 participants. Okayama International Circuit. Okayama is nestled away in a valley in the Chugoku Mountains in Okayama Prefecture in Japan.
Fun track. That's a fun track. Little technical skills, like in the bottom half of it. But other than that, fun track. It's like a pretty chill track too.
It was built by prolific businessman Hajime Tanaka in 1989 and 1990, who sold a few of his golf courses and spent over 15 billion yen, or $100 million $240 million in 2025 money, to buy the land and build the track. Its original intention was to be a private circuit used only by very wealthy clients, who each had to pay a lifetime fee of 15 million yen, or $100,000 for the pleasure, and it was named TI Circuit Aida, with the TI standing for Tanaka International, and Aida referring to a nearby town which in 2005 merged with several others to form Mimasaka. So, after this, the circuit was renamed to Okayama International Circuit. Tanaka gained over 350 clients, including Nissan and Toyota, thereby generating over 5.25 billion yen, or $34 million, $82 million in 2025 money, just in membership fees. He therefore set his sights on hosting a Grand Prix, and had backing from the Okayama Prefecture state government, who hoped it would boost tourism in the region. It began hosting the Pacific Grand Prix in 1994, which itself featured a team called Pacific Grand Prix. This race is notable as Ayrton Senna was taken out at the start and spent several laps trackside listening for what he suspected to be now illegal traction control on Michael Schumacher's Benetton. The 1995 race was moved from April to October following the Great Hanshin earthquake in January, whose epicenter was only 50 miles or 80 kilometers away, and it was at this race that Michael Schumacher secured his second championship. After this, however, it was dropped from the calendar as attendance was poor as the circuit was near inaccessible, being
what the fuck? How the hell I get there? By parachute, my nigga? What the fuck?
hidden away in the mountains surrounded only by small villages and hamlets. The only way to get to it was via a single 2-lane mountain road, and the city it was eventually named after, Okayama, was 25 miles or 40 kilometers away and took over an hour to get to by car. After this, the circuit struggled financially and was eventually sold to Unimat Holding Company Limited in 2004, who then sold it to the Asuka Corporation in 2012. The circuit has 3 different configurations and currently hosts Super GT, Super Taikyu, Super Formula Lights, the Formula Regional Japanese Championship, and GT World Challenge Asia, amongst others. Albert Park Circuit. Albert Park Circuit, as the name would suggest, is built in Albert Park, a mile and a half or 2.4 kilometres south of downtown Melbourne in the Australian state of Victoria, and 407 miles or 655 kilometres southeast of...
Fun ass track. Fun track. Not too fast, I don't feel like. A little technical, like, it looks like it ain't no technical snows required, but like, if you see in the, like, the top corner, that little turn right there, a little hairpin, another little hairpin, another hairpin, another one, a little turn, the hairpin right there. It's like a very deceiving track. You feel me? I feel like it's a good pace and technical skills required, and I feel like you could overtake if you like really like try to overtake somebody.
Adelaide Street Circuit. It encircles Albert Park Lake, and despite its appearance is in fact a street circuit made up entirely of public roads. When not hosting any races, it's almost unrecognisable as such, as all infrastructure, aside from the pit building, is dismantled, including the gravel traps. Turn 4 runs through the middle of the car park serving the Lake Stadium Sports Centre, but the rest of the track can be easily navigated. It was first built in 1953 and originally ran in a counterclockwise direction, but hosted just 6 race meetings before closing in 1958. 38 years later, however, the circuit was resurrected to be the new host of the Australian Grand Prix following a push from then Premier of Victoria Jeff Kennett. The circuit was now run clockwise and had modifications including a new pit straight parallel to the original, a new left-right complex at the original Turn 1, and a chicane between the original Turns 3 and 4. Where Adelaide Street Circuit had hosted the Australian Grand Prix as the season finale and early spring in October, Albert Park now did as the season opener in late summer in March. It has continued in this role ever since, save for 2006 when Melbourne was hosting the Commonwealth Games, and swapping with the Bahrain Grand Prix in 2010. The 2020 race was abruptly cancelled at the last minute due to the outbreak of COVID-19 in the paddock and the city, and the race was then cancelled again in 2021 before returning in 2022 with a slightly modified layout, with the chicane at turns 9 and 10 being turned into a fast right-left kink, now as the third round of the season. The track is extremely smooth for a street circuit and has little to no elevation change, making it one of the easiest circuits to learn and drive. However, as it is very narrow and is predominantly made up of high-speed corners, overtaking is difficult. Despite its long-standing appearance on the Formula 1 calendar and prime location in Australia's second largest city, it has failed to match the attendance numbers of its predecessor in Adelaide. It has stood out across the years, however, as its frequent position as the season opener means almost every Formula 1 driver over the past 27 years has made their debut there, and the bottleneck at Turn 1 often creates drama, most notably in 2002, 2006, 2008 and 2023. It will continue to host the Australian Grand Prix until at least 2035, and outside of Formula 1 also hosts Formula 2, Formula 3, V8 Supercars and Porsche Carrera Cup Australia. Sepang International Circuit. Sepang is built in the Malaysian state of Selangor, just to the east of Kuala Lumpur International Airport, and 26 miles or 42 kilometers south of downtown Kuala Lumpur.
Alright, let's look at this one. Alright, so when the corners are sharp, they're fast corners, which makes sense. Like a 90-degree angle corner, like that requires you to like push on your brakes, turn, and then punch it. So the opportunities to overtaking is like, it's not there really. But this one, the corners seems like a little bit more wide. You feel me? They widen shit. So like, I feel like you do have to push on your brakes, but because it's wide, the opportunity to overtake niggas is there. You feel me? So I feel like this track is a little technical. Opportunity to overtake is there. Yeah, is it a fast track though? Well, it's except for like the interior of it right here with the 2 long straights. You could punch it there, but I feel like and right here too a little bit though. And up there a little bit, but other than that though, I feel like it's like a nicely paced, overtakeable track.
In the 1990s, Malaysia was on the rise in the automotive industry. Car manufacturer Proton was founded in 1983, and oil company Petronas began sponsoring Formula 1 team Sauber in 1997. So, Then President Mahathir Mohamad commissioned a Grand Prix circuit, which was designed and built by Hermann Tilke from 1997 to 1999. It immediately began hosting the Malaysian Grand Prix, becoming the first Grand Prix in Southeast Asia. It was popular from the start, receiving widespread praise for the circuit's very unique design and aesthetic, especially the umbrella-shaped grandstand covers, and when it was moved from October to April in 2001, that put it in monsoon season. So the 2001, 2009 and 2012 races all featured torrential rain. It had many notable moments, such as Ferrari's bargeboard scandal in 1999, Michael Schumacher's first corner crash in 2002, Kimi Raikkonen getting his first win in 2003, Multi 21 in 2013, Sebastian Vettel's first win for Ferrari in 2015, and Lewis Hamilton's championship-defining retirement from the lead in 2016. Vettel was particularly fond of the circuit, with a record 4 wins there, but despite its popularity, attendance was average and it was dropped after 2017. It today is a very popular motorcycle venue and has hosted MotoGP since its opening, but was marred by the death of Marco Simoncelli in 2011 and Afridza Munanda in 2019. The circuit has 3 different configurations and also hosts GT cars, Super GT, Formula 4 Southeast Asia and its flagship event, the Sepang 12 Hours. Bahrain International Circuit. Bahrain International Circuit is located in the Sakhir Desert region of the southern governorate of Bahrain, 1.5 miles or 2.4 kilometers southeast of the town of Zalak, and 13 miles or 21 kilometers south-southwest of the nation's capital of Man.
Damn, sand all over the place. Hot as fuck. Sand, hot as fuck, bro. Heat crazy. The track itself, nicely paced, technical as fuck. The corners, there's some wide corners, a little opportunities to overtake. Except this one though, that's fast. I don't know. It could be done, but I don't know. But like, you gotta be really know what the fuck he's doing with that V. You feel me? So, this track I feel like it's annoying. It's annoying. It's an annoying ass track. It gotta be an annoying ass track.
Panama. It was built in 2004 by Hermann Tilke to host the Bahrain Grand Prix, becoming the first Grand Prix in the Middle East. Talks of a Middle Eastern Grand Prix go back as early as the 1980s, but it was Bahrain that ultimately won out against Lebanon, Egypt and the United Arab Emirates to do so first. The desert setting and climate was a rather unique aesthetic for Formula 1, and at first a lot of the infrastructure hadn't been finished and the drivers struggled as the track was very dusty. In 2005, the circuit set a new air temperature record for Formula 1 at 42.6 degrees Celsius or 107.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and Turn 4 was widened, slightly lengthening the circuit, but it otherwise has remained unchanged. The circuit offers 6 layouts, 3 of which have been used in Formula 1. The standard Grand Prix layout, the endurance layout, used once in 2010, and the fast outer layout, used for the Sakhir Grand Prix in 2020. The 2011 race was cancelled due to the Arab Spring protests, but otherwise the circuit has been a mainstay on the Formula 1 calendar, having acted as the season opener in 2006, 2010 and from 2021 to 2024. In 2014, the races started being held at night, and since then the quality of racing has improved drastically, with the 2014, 2019, 2021 and 2022 races being notable examples. In 2024, the race was moved to Saturday along with the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix 1 week later to avoid conflict with the start of the month of Ramadan. The circuit has extensive runoff and as such is very popular for testing, and is also one of the safest circuits in the world, despite Romain Grosjean's near-fatal accident there in 2020. It's also generally known for being very tough on brakes, as there are a lot of hard braking zones and off-camber corners, and it will be on the calendar until at least 2036. Shanghai International Circuit. Shanghai International Circuit is located in Jiading, 18 miles or 28 kilometers northwest of central Shanghai.
That looks like it's annoying as hell. Annoying, technical. I don't see any opportunities to overtake over here because like the turns seem tight. Yeah, it's an annoying circuit, bro.
As Beijing was set to host the Olympic Games in 2008, in the early 2000s, Shanghai authorities decided to build a Grand Prix circuit to also put Shanghai on the map. Hermann Tilke was commissioned to design the circuit with a budget of 2.6 billion yuan. equivalent to 450 million US dollars, 750 million in 2025 money, and like everything else in China, it's state-owned. Construction required the removal of over 2 million cubic litres of soil as it was built on swampy marshland that was once rice paddy fields. The circuit, as anyone who's played Formula 1 Championship Edition will remember from the loading screens, is designed to resemble the Shang symbol in Chinese characters, meaning above or ascend. As such, it features two distinctive snail-shaped chicanes and a 0.7 mile or 1.2 kilometre long back straight. It began hosting the Chinese Grand Prix in 2004, where Michael Schumacher set the circuit's current lap record, and has hosted it ever since, aside from 2020 to 2023 due to COVID-19. The 2006, 2007, 2009, 2010 and 2017 races all featured rain, and the 2019 race was Formula 1's 1000th World Championship race. Most races have been average, but notable moments include a car crash of a weekend for Michael Schumacher in 2004, the V10 Swang Song in 2005, Michael Schumacher's final win in 2006, Lewis Hamilton throwing the championship away in 2007, Sebastian Vettel taking his first win with Red Bull in 2009, Nico Rosberg getting his first win in 2012, and a dogged victory from Daniel Ricciardo in 2018. It will be on the calendar until at least 2030 and also hosts Chinese Formula 4, Chinese touring cars, Porsche Carrera Cup Asia, Lamborghini Super Trofeo China, and the Shanghai E-Prix. Istanbul Park. Istanbul Park is in the Tuzla district of Turkey on the Asian side of the Bosphorus Strait, 21 miles or 34 kilometers east-southeast of central Istanbul. It was built by Hermann Tilke and opened in 2005, where it began hosting the Turkish Grand Prix. It rather uniquely runs counterclockwise and received immediate praise from drivers and fans for being fast, flowing, undulating, and for the quadruple left-hander Turn 8. Like Shanghai, it's state-owned, but Bernie Ecclestone held the managing rights to it from 2007 to 2011 and has coincidentally also declared it the greatest racetrack in the world. Even though it was very popular and had a total capacity of 125,000, attendance was always poor due to its relatively remote location far outside Istanbul. And so it was dropped after 2011. 9 years later, however, it returned as part of the slapdash COVID calendar. Beforehand, however, the track had been resurfaced without the FIA's knowledge, and it also being wet all weekend meant it was like an ice rink. Even so, Lewis Hamilton secured his 7th title in the rain, and it returned in 2021, which was once again wet, but was then dropped again. Today, the circuit is largely inactive, with the only series of note it hosting being a round of the World Rallycross Championship on a very small section of the circuit. Valencia Street Circuit. Valencia was a street circuit built in and around Valencia's Docklands. It was commissioned by the Valmore Sport Group in 2000, built in and around Valencia's Docklands.
Right. Setting 100. Setting, that looks beautiful. Drive on. The circuit itself, technical. I see some opportunities to overtake. The turns is tight. Looks like it's a little annoying to drive on, but overall, it's pretty cool.
It was commissioned by the Valmore Sport Group in 2007 and designed and built by Hermann Tilke. It mostly used pre-existing roads, aside from the final sector, and rather uniquely crossed the swing bridge at the harbour entrance, and featured an astonishing 25 corners crammed into 3.4 miles or 5.4 kilometres of track. The idea was that it would serve as the impetus to revitalise the area, which was mostly filled with abandoned warehouses. It began hosting the European Grand Prix in 2008, replacing the Nürburgring, but quickly came under criticism for dull racing with little to no overtaking as it was narrow but with large runoffs and extremely dusty offline. The 2011 race saw 0 retirements with a record 24 finishers, but the 2012 race, through good fortune, ended up being a modern classic that saw a home win for Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher's last ever podium. Despite that, however, it was still dropped 2 years before its contract was due to expire, as the credit crunch meant the surrounding urban development never came and the costs of running the race for the Valencian government skyrocketed. Today, the circuit has been left largely as it was and is almost fully navigable, aside from fences blocking the track at turns 5, 14 and 24, a basketball court built at turn 7, and bollards that have turned turns 12 and 13 into a roundabout. The pit building is still up, but has been gutted out. The pit wall has been taken down and the pit lane and main straight have been turned into a car park, but the grid boxes and start-finish line are still there, though somewhat faded, and remarkably, 13 years on, there are still visible tyre marks in the former pit boxes. Around the rest of the circuit, all the catch fencing and barriers are gone, but most of the rumble strips and curbing are still in place, as well as the Santander and UBS sponsorship. The third sector is now on wasteland, which appears to have a small shanty town in the infield, but it and the rest of the circuit have survived largely intact in a very busy harbour. Marina Bay Street Circuit. Marina Bay is a street circuit that goes through downtown core and Kallang in the Marina Bay region of Singapore.
No technical, nice setting. I see there's some opportunities to overtake. The turn seems like they wide enough to do that. It's like a fun circuit.
It was built in 2008 by engineering company KBR for 33 million Singapore dollars, or 24 million US dollars, 35 million in 2025 money, and everything except turns 1, 2, 17, 18, 19 and the main straight are pre-existing roads. It began hosting the Singapore Grand Prix in 2008, and its rather unique selling point was that it was Formula One's first ever night race, complete with 1600 floodlights. It's hosted the race ever since, aside from 2020 and 2021 due to COVID. Initially, the circuit was widely criticised by drivers as it was extremely bumpy, in particular the extremely high curbs at the Singapore Sling, which offered only a single, very narrow racing line through. In 2013, the Singapore Sling was removed and turned into a standard left-hander. Turns 11 to 13 were reprofiled in 2015, turns 17 and 18 in 2017, and then, in 2023, the section from turns 16 to 19 that ran under a grandstand was bypassed with a new straight to make the circuit faster. Because it has no high-speed corners, Marina Bay has a very low average speed, which, combined with the fact that every race there except 2024 thus far has featured a safety car, means the 2-hour time limit has been reached on 5 occasions, and no race has lasted under 1 hour and 40 minutes. Of the 24 safety cars in Singapore, the first was actually brought about intentionally to facilitate the win for Fernando Alonso, and the rest have come about as the circuit, while being slow, is very physically challenging with the tropical climate and little room for error. Sebastian Vettel has a record 5 wins here and is known as the Lion of Singapore, and it's one of the few modern circuits Max Verstappen has not won at, and it will be on the calendar until at least 2028. Yas Marina Circuit. Yas Marina is at the southern end of Yas Island, an artificial island carved out by 2 canals, 13 miles or 20 kilometers east of Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates.
Alright. Setting. Looks lit. Turns wide enough. I feel like there's some good opportunities to overtake. The speed, I feel like the top half, you could punch it. Bottom half, definitely technical. Definitely opportunities to overtake. Word.
It was built from 2007 to 2009 by Herman Tilke and commissioned by the Abu Dhabi government for the cost of 4.85 billion dirham, or 1.32 billion US dollars, 1.93 billion in 2025 money, making it one of the most expensive circuits in the world. 2 years earlier, the first Formula One festival had been held in Abu Dhabi, which was the largest gathering of contemporary Formula One cars and drivers outside of a Grand Prix. It was built as part of an elaborate entertainment and tourism complex, with the Ferrari World theme park adjacent to it opening just before, which includes Formula Rossa, the world's fastest roller coaster. The circuit has its own marina and runs under the Yas Hotel. The circuit itself is fairly unique, as the pit exit runs under the track, and it being enclosed with large grandstands gives it the feeling of a stadium. It began hosting the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2009, which was Formula One's first day-to-night transition race. It's usually the season finale, and as such has the symbolic value of the sun setting on the season. As the season finale, it has also been the title decider in 2010, 2014, 2016, and, of course, 2021. Outside of this, the races have been largely forgettable, aside from 2012, which saw a charge from the pit lane to podium by Sebastian Vettel, and the first win of Kimi Raikkonen's comeback, who when the circuit opened in 2009 said, "The first few corners are good, but the rest of it is shit." Attempts were made to spice it up in 2014, with the only use so far of double points in a race, and then in 2021 the Turn 5 chicane was removed, and the Turn 11 chicane was turned into a slightly banked hairpin. It's made little difference, however, and the circuit will be on the calendar until at least 2030, and also hosts Formula 2, Formula Regional Middle East, the Asian Le Mans Series, and 3 endurance races: the 4 Hours of Abu Dhabi, the 6 Hours of Abu Dhabi, and the Gulf 12 Hours. Korea International Circuit. Korea International Circuit is built on the Yong'an Peninsula, 3.5 miles or 5.5 kilometers south of the city of Mokpo in Yongam County in South Jeolla Province in South Korea, and is commonly known as
nice circuit, bro. Wide turns. Except for that one right there. The 2 at the top, fast and tight. The rest of it, though, nice turns to overtake. Looks like a good pace right here. And setting looks lit.
Yongam. It was designed by Hermann Tilke and built in 2010 for 88 billion won, or 77 million US dollars, 111 million in 2025 money. The original concept was that the circuit would become the epicenter of a new entertainment complex, complete with hotels, restaurants, and a marina, designed to compete with Monaco and Abu Dhabi, and it was built on flat wasteland to accommodate this. None of this was ever built, however, which gave the circuit a very depressing backdrop, as it was in very close proximity to a very large industrial complex and docklands. The circuit itself was designed with 3 very long straights and a technical middle sector, and featured 2 layouts, with the full layout only being used for Formula 1, and the smaller layout with its own paddock being used all year round. After numerous delays with its construction, it began hosting the Korean Grand Prix in 2010, though clearly only half built. This race was chaotic and beset with torrential rain, which created numerous safety cars and a 40-minute red flag. The original pit lane entry and exit both also came under scrutiny for both being right on the racing line. The Korean Grand Prix originally had a 7-year contract with an optional 5-year extension, but ended up being dropped after 2013 due to poor attendance, as its isolated, marshy setting was not very enticing. None of the elaborate plans for the circuit came to light, and even though it is still an active venue, it effectively looks abandoned as it is virtually featureless, and still has the empty roads and thoroughfares designed with this unbuilt entertainment complex in mind. A third configuration was added in 2019, allowing simultaneous use of both paddocks, but the only major series it continues to host is the domestic Super Race Championship. Bud International Circuit. Bud is built in JP Sports City in Uttar Pradesh in India, 30 miles or 48 kilometers southeast of central New Delhi.
Not bad. Not bad. Cool circuit. A lot of opportunities to overtake. Very technical, I feel like. Yeah, but overall, it's a nice circuit.
In 2009, JP Sports City was constructed by the JP Group as a 5,000-acre sports complex, and a Grand Prix circuit was to be its centrepiece. Hermann Tilke was contracted to design Bud Circuit, and it was completed in 2011, just in time to host the Indian Grand Prix for 20 billion rupees, or 435 million US dollars, 640 million in 2025 money. At first, there were teething problems as the air and the track surface was incredibly dusty, stray dogs were breaking onto the circuit, there were recurrent power cuts, and a colony of bats was found roosting in the pit building. The circuit itself, though, was well received by the drivers for its undulation, the very long and very wide back straight, and the banked turn 10, nicknamed Curry Bolaka. It was also well attended as it coincided with Diwali, and the spectators had local driver Narain Kartikeyan to support. Even so, the race was largely uneventful, as were the following 2, and all 3 were won by Sebastian Vettel, who at the 2013 race secured his 4th consecutive driver's title. Even though the races were big events, the track owners were struggling as the government of Uttar Pradesh had not afforded them the tax exemptions usually given to sports events, as they considered Formula 1 to be entertainment rather than a sport. So, the money that was set aside to pay the hosting fee to Formula 1 was instead being taken by the local government, and they were also being charged import duties on cars, engines, and other equipment. Because of this, they took a 1-year sabbatical in 2014, which quickly became permanent. The tax issue was eventually resolved in court in 2017, and now the circuit gets by hosting smaller scale, much cheaper domestic events and track days, but it did host a round of MotoGP in 2023, and during the COVID-19 pandemic served as a vaccination centre. Circuit of the Americas. Circuit of the Americas, or COTA for short, is located 11 miles or 18 kilometers southeast of downtown Austin, Texas.
Alright. This is like a fun fucking track. Yeah, that's a fun ass track, bro. Well paced, opportunities to punch it. You can punch, technical punch. You can still punch a little technical. You could overtake right there. Feel me? Overall, setting looks like it's on point too. So niggas could overtake this track, bro.
It was designed by Hermann Tilke, with assistance from Tavo Helmond and Kevin Schwantz, and was the first permanent race circuit in the United States designed with Formula One in mind. It opened in 2012 in time to resurrect the United States Grand Prix and brought Formula One back to Texas for the first time in 28 years. The circuit's most distinctive feature is the very steep and very wide run-up to Turn 1 with a blind apex. It's a very technical circuit that takes inspiration from many others, and has hosted the United States Grand Prix every year since 2012 except for 2020. It continues to be a sellout event, helped by the popularity of Drive to Survive. The weekend is similar to Silverstone in having a festival atmosphere, as the circuit features a 14,000-seat amphitheatre for concerts, where artists such as Taylor Swift, Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears and Bruno Mars have performed during the Grand Prix weekend, and it's a valuable asset to Austin, which has become a very trendy city as Texas starts to take the cultural and business baton away from California. Despite all this, the races are often average in quality. Lewis Hamilton has 5 wins there and clinched the title there in 2015 and 2019, and it will be on the calendar until at least the end of 2026, and also hosts NASCAR, MotoGP, the World Endurance Championship, GT Cars and Trans Am amongst others. Sirius Autodrome. Sirius Autodrome is located in the Sochi Olympic Park in Sirius in the Imeretinsky Valley in the Russian Federation, only 2 miles or 3.4 kilometers from the border.
Nice track. It looks like it's high speed. Turns are possible, but the corners look like they're very tight though. Backdrop lit. Cool track.
Border with Georgia. For over 30 years, Russian authorities have been trying to secure a Grand Prix, and after getting the contract to host the 2014 Winter Olympics at the Black Sea resort of Sochi, the Kremlin set aside 12 billion rubles, or just under $200 million US, 260 million in 2025 money, to build the circuit in the Olympic Park, which was christened the Sochi Autodrome. There was naturally a lot of resistance to this, but even so, it began hosting the Russian Grand Prix in 2014, 6 months after Russia annexed Crimea, and President Putin presented the trophies at the podium ceremony. The circuit had a very long run to the first proper corner, followed by one of the longest and most sustained corners in Formula One history. Elsewhere though, the circuit was bland with no elevation change and the races often average. The 2021 race, however, was rain affected and saw a debut pole position for Lando Norris, only for him to throw the win away when rain came at the end of the race and give Lewis Hamilton his 100th win. 6 months later, however, Russia invaded Ukraine and the 2022 race was dropped. It was first announced that from 2023 the Russian Grand Prix would move to Igora Drive, but this was quickly cancelled as well, and what is now the Sirius Autodrome is unlikely to return to Formula One or any international motorsport in the future. Baku City Circuit. Baku City Circuit is a street circuit built by Hermann Tilke in the Azerbaijani capital that spans the medieval old city and the modern business district overlooking the
It's the key. It's the key, bro. I still don't understand this track, bro. I mean, the top part of it looks punchable. The corners looks like it's wide enough for you to overtake. So the top part looks like you're doing good. The bottom half don't look that bad either, but like you can't really go too fast. A lot of turns. I feel like the turns don't look too narrow. So I feel like there's a good track for you to overtake. So I feel like there's a lot of action on this track.
Caspian Sea. The spine of the circuit is Neftchylar Avenue, which forms a 1.4 mile or 2.2 kilometre long straight. The rest of the circuit is extremely narrow and formed primarily of 90-degree turns, with turn 7 being just 25 feet or 7.7 metres wide. The circuit first appeared in 2016, hosting the European Grand Prix, but since 2017 has hosted the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, save for its cancellation in 2020. The circuit is essentially Monaco meets Monza, and so accidents are very common. The 2016, 2019, 2022 and 2023 races were largely uneventful, but 2017 had 3 safety cars and a red flag, 2018 had a collision between Red Bull teammates Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen, the 2021 race saw 4 red flags from 5 crashes in qualifying, then 2 high-speed tyre blowouts for Lance Stroll and Max Verstappen down the main straight in the race, and Lewis Hamilton's famous brake magic blunder after the red flag restart, and 2024 saw a race-long battle for the lead. It will continue to host the Azerbaijan Grand Prix until at least the end of 2026, and alongside this also hosts the Formula 2 support races, but spends the rest of the year as public roads. Autodromo Internazionale del Mugello. Mugello Circuit is located half a mile or 0.8 of a kilometre east of Scarperia e Samperio in the Mugello Valley of Tuscany in Italy.
Backdrop looks lit. Track itself is lit. A little technical, and I feel like mad opportunities to overtake.
It was built in 1974, a few miles away from the site of the former Mugello Street Circuit, active around the area for 50 years. It was bought by Ferrari in 1988 and held the non-championship Mugello Grand Prix on-off from its opening until 2000, and it then gained popularity as a motorcycle venue, which it was perfectly suited to with fast-flowing undulating corners. In 2012, it was then chosen to host an in-season Formula 1 test, attended by every team except HRT. Being virtually unknown by the Formula 1 crowd, it immediately caught the drivers' attention, who praised its classic design and eschewing of tarmac runoffs in favour of grass and gravel, in the backdrop of the rolling hills of Tuscany. 8 years later, it then got its chance to host a Grand Prix as part of the COVID calendar, hosting the Tuscan Grand Prix, officially titled the Formula 1 per il Gran Premio della Toscana Ferrari 2020. This race was red flagged twice, first for a huge pile-up at a safety car restart, and then for a big crash from Lance Stroll, and the event was a huge success that also saw Ferrari run a one-off burgundy livery to commemorate their 1000th Grand Prix, and Mick Schumacher do a demonstration run in Father Michael's Ferrari F2004. Despite being a hit, it did not appear on the Formula 1 calendar in 2021, but remained an active venue hosting MotoGP, FRECA, Italian Formula 4, GT Cars, Boss GP, and the 12 Hours of Mugello. Autodromo Internacional do Algarve. Algarve International Circuit is nestled in the hills of the Algarve, 8 miles or 13 kilometres north-northwest of Portimao on the southern coast of Portugal. Or 13 kilometres north-northwest of Portimao on the southern coast of Portugal.
Good track, very technical. You could overtake this. Facts. Not bad.
It was built in 2008 by Ricardo Pina for €195 million, or $290 million, $430 million in 2025 money. It was heavily inspired by Estoril and began hosting motorcycle and sports car events, and also Formula 1 testing sessions in 2008 and 2009. In 2020, it was added to the Formula 1 calendar, bringing the Portuguese Grand Prix back after 24 years. Its great elevation change made it popular with the drivers, and it hosted the race again in 2021, but both races were average and it was then dropped. It now hosts MotoGP, Elms, and various GT and sports car events, including the 4 Hours of Portimao, and could well return to Formula 1 in the future. Lusail International Circuit. Lusail International Circuit is located 5.5 miles or 9 kilometres north-northwest of Lusail in Qatar, and 14 miles or 23 kilometres north of the nation's capital, Doha.
It's not bad. I like it. Very flat. Looks like it's fast. white angles to turn.
It was built in 2004 by the Qatar Motor and Motorcycle Federation for $58 million, $97 million in 2025 money, and opened on my 12th birthday as Qatar's first and so far only racetrack. It was originally intended for motorcycles and was added to the MotoGP calendar. In 2007, floodlights were installed to enable night races, and in 2009 it hosted a round of the GP2 Asia Series at night. It then hosted the World Touring Car Championship from 2015 to 2017, and in 2021 was added to the Formula One calendar as host of the Qatar Grand Prix as a replacement for the cancelled Australian Grand Prix. To facilitate this, it had to be extensively modified, including increasing the capacity from 8,000 to 52,000. Across the weekend, there were endless problems with track limits on the very flat circuit, and 4 tyre failures during the race. It returned on a long-term basis in 2023 on a 10-year deal, 1 year after Qatar had hosted the FIFA World Cup. Even more upgrades were made, including new curbs and rumble strips, which inadvertently risked tyre blowouts and forced the FIA to mandate maximum stint lengths of 18 laps. As well as this, extreme heat and humidity, even for November at night, made it one of the most physically demanding races of the modern era. The 2024 race was full of controversial stewarding and race control decisions, and it will be on the calendar until at least 2032. Jeddah Corniche Circuit. Jeddah Corniche Circuit is a street circuit facing the Red Sea in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. It was built in 2021 by Herman Tilke's son Carsten and is officially classified as a street circuit, despite the fact it literally isn't, because the entire circuit is purpose-built and not part of the public road network, but it has the feel of a street circuit because it's narrow and surrounded by concrete walls. It's also the fastest street circuit in Formula One because it's not a street circuit. It began hosting the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2021, and like with the also new Qatar Grand Prix, received a lot of opposition from Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the drivers, and Formula One fans at large. It almost got dropped as 9 months earlier there had been a missile interception directly over the Diriyah E-Prix in Riyadh, and the 2022 race was almost boycotted by the drivers following a missile strike by Houthi rebels in Yemen on an Aramco oil depot only 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the circuit during Friday practice. And 2 weeks before the race, the authorities had carried out a mass execution of 81 people. The circuit itself is very wiggly and technical, with no real straights of any kind, resembling a melted spoon, and is easily the most dangerous in modern Formula One, as it has the confines of Monaco mixed with the speed of Monza. As such, there have been several major accidents already in the 4 races it has hosted, and it will be on the calendar until at least 2030, but it is expected that before then...
Yo, that looks lit! What the fuck? Oh my god, bro. Look at this circuit, my nigga. Holy shit. Punch it. Tight turn, my nigga. Punch for a little bit, tight turn, technical as fuck. There's some angles look a little tight, I ain't gonna lie, bro. Angles a little tight, but there's some wide angles for opportunities to overtake. That's a lit fucking circuit. Holy shit.
A new circuit being built in Qiddiya will take over as Saudi Arabian Grand Prix host. Miami International Autodrome. Miami International Autodrome is built on the grounds of the Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Miami Dolphins, in the Miami Gardens suburb, 13 miles or 21 kilometers north-northwest of downtown.
Backdrop with turns a little tight, especially right here. Tight ass, little technical ass fucking turns right here. I feel like this is a fast, tight circuit.
Downtown Miami. It was designed and built by Apex Circuit Design in 2022 and is a temporary circuit, but not a street circuit, though it does cross public roads at 2 points. It began hosting the Miami Grand Prix in 2022, and had it been on the calendar in the 1980s, it probably would have been a massive hit. Instead, with all the sucking up to NFL players and celebrities no one's heard of, an opening ceremony none of the drivers care about, and the construction of a fake marina in a city that's mostly underwater, it ended up being what can be described as little more than an orgy of cringe, not helped by the races being utterly forgettable. Before the first cars had even taken to the track, it had secured a 10-year contract and would be on the calendar until at least 2031, despite the fact that it has been effectively usurped in both role and function by the final circuit in this video, which leads us to... Las Vegas Strip Circuit. Las Vegas Strip Circuit is a street circuit built on Las Vegas Boulevard, aka the Las Vegas Strip.
Oh my gosh, bro. Oh my gosh, bro. What the fuck, bro? Oh my gosh, bro. Backdrop, 100 foot. Talking about punch it, nigga. Punch it. Except at the ends though. But the angle, this angle right here, lit. The top angle is tight, fast. The top part of it a little fast, but overall, circuit's fucking lit.
It was designed by Carsten Tilke and built in 2022 and 2023 in preparation to host the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Turn 7 lies just meters from the former site of the long-gone Caesars...
Man, no fucking... Bro, what? Oh. It's high as fuck, too. But I feel like this is more enjoyable than that fucking circuit right there, bro. I feel like this is like more open. You're driving faster. So, to be honest with you, the heat might not be a problem because all the wind is going to be blowing through your hair while you're driving and shit. So, it's going to be cool. Except for that shit. Oh my God. What the fuck were they thinking when they built that shit? Man?
Palace Grand Prix circuit. But the two are nothing alike, as Las Vegas Strip Circuit is much larger and very fast and expansive, running along the strip for 1.2 miles or 1.
Yo, what? This shit look lit.
9 kilometers, which is the second longest straight on the calendar after Baku. It rather uniquely runs as a night race at a time slot which is convenient for basically nobody in America or Europe to take advantage of the lights of the casinos and hotels and the gargantuan MSG Sphere, and during the day the track is reopened to the public. However, at the first race, being at night had the knock-on effect that temperatures in the desert were extremely low, and the circuit was also rather poorly constructed, with loose drain covers destroying cars and disrupting proceedings. There were also attempts to block people who hadn't bought inordinately expensive tickets from watching the track action on public walkways and footpaths by blocking them up, and very inadequate compensation for the cancelled practice sessions. Despite these issues and its own manufactured cringe, the two races it has hosted so far have been relatively entertaining due to lack of grip and plentiful overtaking, and the circuit organisers were frothing at the loins when Max Verstappen secured his 4th title there in 2024. It will host the race until at least 2025, though probably well beyond that, and only also hosts the F1 Academy as it remains closed for the rest of the year. But unlike Caesars Palace, it looks like it's here to stay. That's all for this video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe and click the bell icon. Follow.
Tell you something, man. Nice tracks, man. Nice fucking tracks, bro.